Here's what you'll need for the brake swap. 2004 to 2007 Cadillac CTS-V Calipers, 4 pistons. 2008 to 2015 Lancer Evo 10 brake rotors. Copper crush washers for 10mm banjo bolts. CTS-V hardware kit, you can get this from Advanced. M12 1.75 by 45mm hex flange caliper bolts. And Lancer Evo 10 brake pads from Hawk Performance is what I'm using on mine, but of course you can use any that you want. I'll be including a list of all the hardware in the video description below. In addition to everything listed, you're going to want to get new wheels, as running the stock wheels with these brakes would require a 20mm spacer, which would not only ruin your fitment, but also the drivability of the car. Wheels with a plus 30 offset are preferred, but positive 35s work fine depending on the spoke style. Remember that not all wheels are created equal, so even if you get positive 35s, have a 2mm or 3mm spacer on hand, as you don't want to risk scraping the surface face off of your calipers. The wheels I'm running on my car are Rosenstein Deltas, 18 by 8.5s with a positive 35 offset, and they leave about 1.5mm of space away from the caliper. My tires are 245 by 35 Pilot Sport 4 All Seasons by Michelin, though they do rub full lock on left and right turns, so 235s may be recommended if you want to run the same wheel setup. The first step, of course, is to remove the wheels off of your car. As you can see, the rears have already been put on. In order to take off the front calipers, you'll need a 16mm socket to remove both of the caliper bolts. I recommend taking the top one off first and holding the caliper while removing the bottom one. I found it easier than bottom first, as the caliper likes to move a lot more when just the top bolt is hanging on. Go ahead and set the caliper up somewhere. If you have zip ties, you can hold the caliper to the bottom of your suspension while you get everything ready. Now I am removing the rotors. There are 2 Phillips screws that hold the rotors in place. These screws can strip easily, so you'll want to have a very thick Phillips head screwdriver and make sure to take them out slowly. Don't rush this. Once the rotor is off, do whatever you want with them. These ones have seen 24,000 miles and several track days, so they won't be seeing much more road time. At this point, you'll want to use a 12mm socket in order to remove the brake line. If you have locking pliers, you can use them to clamp the brake line to minimize fluid getting everywhere. Make sure to remove the banjo bolt from the line. There will be a crush washer where the banjo bolt meets the brake line, and one where the brake line sits on the caliper itself. Replace these with 2 new copper crush washers. Here is the CTS-V caliper, powder coated by IDS Blast, locally in Indiana. The color code, if you want to replicate mine, is Prismatic Powders PSS 10393, with high temp vinyl logos I made and printed to give them a more OEM look. Go ahead and attach the brake line to the caliper. The stock banjo bolt goes into the caliper, though it may be a bit of a tight fit. It might have also been because of the powder coat that was on there. I had to use a socket to seat it in while screwing it in tight, and do not tighten it all the way. The brake line will move a little bit while you're seating the screw, so sit the caliper in its proper position and rotate the brake line so it isn't rubbing anything before you get the caliper locked in. Now I'm putting on the rotor. This is a stock Lancer Evo 10 rotor. If you want to go for slotted or drilled, it'll increase the budget, but obviously maximize the performance. And make sure to seat the rotor in with 2 lug nuts while attaching the caliper. The rotors don't want to sit still if you don't sit them with lug nuts. At this point, get your caliper in with the new caliper bolts. As shown in the beginning, these are M12 1.75 by 45mm flange bolts. It took a long time to source quality ones that match the thread pitch, and a big shout out to Joshua from K-Tune for working with me to find the correct sizes. You can use the same 16mm socket to get these in as you used for the previous ones. And once they're on, you should be able to slide the pads in from the top and line up the pins with your Caliper hardware. caliper hardware I'm showing here is not like Brembo's I'm normally familiar with. Normally what I'm used to is pins that would come out and there would be holes that could be secured with cottering pins. Rather, these ones that I have included are friction fit and they hold themselves in together well. Don't worry about anything backing out. As long as you put the calipers on and everything looks centered, it should be fine. I checked them multiple times after bedding them and braking hard, and they were able to stand the hard braking. Now I'm just checking the work on the other side where two of my friends are replicating the steps. After this, do what you would normally do with a brake job. Bleed all the way around. Rear passenger, rear driver, front passenger, front driver. Going from as far away from the master cylinder as you can to the closest. The front calipers do have 2 bleeder valves as opposed to the stock ones which have 1. For these, bleed the inner valve first and then the outer. The inner one actually goes into the outer as the outer gets fluid second. After my first lap, I noticed the outer valve wasn't putting out as much pressure as the inner, and after a second lap, they both started producing even pressure. At this point, I put on the front wheels, did some light testing in the driveway, and then took it out on a back road near my house. After 4 days, I absolutely love them. There isn't as much bite as the stock ones, but the braking powder is still there. The main reason for these is heat dissipation, as the stock single pistons don't vent well and they get super hot. The brakes absolutely add aesthetic appeal as well, and overall I'm super happy with the swap. I'm excited to get a track day out here when the weather clears up and come back with a video with results. The calipers themselves were $329, but I easily could have saved $100 by getting unpainted ones since I was going to powder coat them anyways. I got both rotors for $87 from AutoZone. The bolts came from Clips and Fasteners for $9. The powder coat and logos, which of course isn't necessary, was done by IDS Blast for $128 in total. The pads from Hawk Performance were $178. And the fluid is just stock .4 fluid for $20. The total came out to $751. The calipers themselves are 4 pistons, 2 30mm pistons and 2 33mm pistons on each caliper. And these go up against the OEM Plus Mando kit. The Mando kit itself is $1,850. This comes with the calipers, the knuckle adapters, the rotors, and the bolts. These do not come with pads, to my knowledge. They do require cutting the dust shield, so it is a little bit more effort, and the same thing with the CTS-V brakes. You're going to need bigger wheels or a spacer in order to fit these, as these do not clear the stock normal North American wheels, though they do get cleared by the European exclusive i30N wheels, which we do not get, and those wheels are quite expensive, so I recommend just getting aftermarket wheels to fit these. The Mando calipers themselves have 4 38mm pistons. In addition to the performance advantage of the Mando kit, you also get the disadvantage of increased cost and increased work, as the CTS-V brakes actually fit the stock knuckle size, whereas you need an adapter for the Mando kit, so fitment can be a little bit janky, as well as the work of cutting the dust shield and making everything look nice. Overall, the CTS-V swap is recommended if you're doing it on a budget, and the Mando kit is a little bit more hardcore, and these would be what I would switch to, if not the forged 6-piston rotors if I was doing full-on track days with my car, as opposed to having it as a daily driver mainly. And a special thanks to Eric GST from velosterturbo.org for the general info on the swap, Endorphins at velostern.com in the forums for confirmation of the Veloster N fitment, Joshua S from K-Tuned for hardware and bolt fitment confirmation, and True Wheels AZ for wheels and great communication. Absolutely great to work with, and was able to get my Rosensteins for way less than normally they would be. And of course, if you have any questions about the swap or issues with it, definitely comment. I'd love to read them. Have a good one.